Good morning, students. In the previous class, we discussed about the disaster management cycle. So, we started Unit 2 approaches for disaster risk reduction. So, in that, we started with disaster management cycle. Okay, what are the various steps in preventing or reducing the impacts of a disaster? So, in the disaster management cycle, there are different phases: preparedness phase, mitigation phase, prevention phase, response phase, recovery phase, relief phase, reconstruction phase, and rehabilitation phase. So each phase is important. The first and foremost step is response. Okay, so as soon as a disaster occurs, you have to respond for the disaster. So response means in that saving lives of the people. So as soon as the disaster occurs, if you are safe, you should try to save as much as people possible. Okay, you have to save people's life. So response is very important. So response can be individual or it can be a team oriented one. Okay, then relief measures. So after giving or after saving people, you have to give the basic needs to the people. So for example, after a flood, if you have saved people in an shelter, you have to give them food, water facilities, then medicines. Okay, you should stop spreading the disease. Okay, you have to provide proper clothing. So all these relief measures has to be given to them, that is basic needs has to be supplied for the people. Then after that, rehabilitation. Okay, so after 2 or 3 weeks, you have to help people. Okay, whose building is affected, so you should try to help them in repairing the buildings. Okay, you should help them in establishing their shops. Okay, you should help people in establishing agricultural lands. So it will take almost a few weeks to 3 or 4 months time. Okay, then reconstruction. So it is a long term measure and it is a permanent measure. So for reconstruction it will take years, 3 to 4 years of time, because fund has to come from the government and reconstruction is permanent. If any building is damaged in the rehabilitation phase, you might have given a temporary shelter, but you cannot live in the temporary shelter for a longer period, so you have to reconstruct the houses. So reconstruction will involve much cost and it will take years. Then preparedness. So preparedness is a pre-disaster phase. So before occurrence of a disaster, how we are preparing ourselves to face the disaster, or how we are trying to reduce the impact of the disaster. Okay, it is preparedness. So how preparedness can be done? Assessment can be done. So how much amount of population is there in that particular area, how much amount of food is there, what type of safety measures are the shelters you have identified, how many number of relief vehicles you have, how much amount of water is there, how much amount of medicine is there, how you have given the warning to the people. Okay, so these are all some preparedness. Okay, then mitigation. Steps taken before the disaster to reduce the impact of the disaster is called as mitigation phase. Okay, steps taken to reduce the impact of the disaster are called as mitigation phase. So what are all this? For example, if you had a disaster before few years, you might have learned something from them. For example, if you had a earthquake before 2 years, then you might have planned for it. For example, if you have constructed weak buildings, mud houses, they won't withstand earthquakes or floods. Okay, so this lesson you have learnt. So for the future, you should not build mud houses or weak houses. You have to construct houses such that it can withstand flood or earthquake. Okay, so like that, you have to plan for the future mitigation phase. Okay, before the disaster itself, you have to plan such that its impact is lesser. Okay, so these are the different phases in disaster management cycle. So in this class, we will discuss about community based disaster risk reduction. Okay, so community based disaster risk reduction. So how community is involved in disaster management or disaster risk reduction. So why this separate topic is step? So why community based disaster risk reduction? Okay, uh, community is the first and foremost which is affected by any disaster. So community means a human population. Okay, so we are the people who are all affected by the disaster. So we are affected most. So we have to help ourselves. Okay, so first we have to help ourselves. We have to help our family. We have to help our surroundings. We have to help our district people. The district people has to help the state people. If a country is affected and if a state is lesser affected, that state has to go and help the national level. Okay, and if a country is lessly affected by a bigger cyclone or bigger disaster, that country has to go and help the other countries who are all affected. So community is the first responder of a disaster. So we have to involve community in that. So that is why the separate topic is kept. So community based disaster preparedness. So the first responder of any disaster is human population. Okay, so why we have to involve ourselves is community will have some traditional mechanisms to reduce the vulnerabilities. For example, if a flood is going to come, you know which place is safe. Okay, if you are living nearer to a river basin, you have to go to a place. Okay, a hilly place such that the flood does not affect. Okay, so the community means men, women, children, aged people, and handicapped people also. So it involves all types of people. Okay, then participation of the community is vital to sustain the activities of rebuilding the shattered community. Okay, government will give the funding, but who will rebuild the community after a disaster? Okay, so people has to help themselves. Okay, then only you can rebuild the disaster. So involvement of community is very very important. So a response mechanism. So why community is involved is a response mechanism to save life, livelihoods, livestock and assets with available resources within the community. For example, if a disaster is going to occur in some place and if you live in that area, you are the first responder. You have to save as much as people possible. You have to help them. You have to give them all types of helps required if you are not, or if you are not affected, or if you are lessly affected. So government agencies will come only after 1 or 2 days. Relief measures will take at least 1 week. So till that you have to survive. So only the people who are all around can help them. Okay, so involvement of community will lead to multi pronged development interventions to address the root cause of the vulnerability. Okay, and to develop a self reliant disaster proof community. So why involvement of community is needed? Okay, so in earlier times there were only natural disasters. Okay, and those natural disasters caused destruction of human lives, livelihood, and property. Okay, people were illiterate and they were afraid of something called as God. Okay, they thought that when a natural disaster comes, it is an act of God. God is going to destroy us. Okay, but later on when the technology started developing, okay, infrastructures were developed, technological advancement took place, and due to the infrastructure and technological development, the frequency of disasters were also raised, and the type of disasters were also increased. Apart from natural disasters, we had man-made disasters also. Okay, due to war, accidents, okay, that may be a fire accident, chemical accident, or nuclear accidents, man-made disasters were created. And due to biological disasters, diseases were spreading like covid, SARS, Ebola. Okay, a lot of new type of disasters were created due to advancement of infrastructure and technology. Okay, so the destruction caused by the new types of disasters are almost unrecoverable and unmanageable for a long period of time. Okay, till 1960s and 1970s, the disasters were unrecoverable and unmanageable. Then people uh, started thinking about these disasters, and they developed some mechanisms such that the impact of disasters are reduced. Okay, they started constructing buildings such that they were able to withstand earthquakes and floods. Okay, they planned for hygiene. Okay, they planned for safety mechanisms to handle chemicals and nuclear materials. Okay, so it has been realized that the community as an institution is the most powerful among the entire mechanism of disaster administration. So even though our agencies were there to help you, government agencies were there, or non-government agencies are there to handle the disaster management, but people are the better leaders at the time of a crisis. Okay, a prime minister or chief minister cannot involve in that directly. Okay, the local people has to become leaders. You have to save people as much as people possible, because you know about the situation, you are standing in that particular arena. Okay, you know how much help is required. Okay, so community as an institution, in the event of actual disasters, the community, if well aware of the preventive actions and preparedness measures, can substantially reduce the damage caused by the disasters or the impact. Okay, so if we are well prepared, the community can withstand the disaster, the effect will be reduced. Okay, so importance of community based disaster planning. Okay, CBDP means community based disaster plan. Okay, so it is at the community level where the effects of disasters are the felt most. Okay, definitely human population are the most affected people by any disaster. Okay, and the effect may be physical, social, economic. Okay, these are all the destructions caused in the disaster. Okay, nobody is more interested in understanding and improving the local affairs. Okay, animals won't involve themselves in rescue operations, so humans are more interested in understanding and improving the local affairs. Okay, and we know the opportunities and constraints also. Okay, whenever you involve yourself in any rescue operation, you know what help will come from others, what is the problem. Okay, what is the problem or what will be the problem, you know better when compared to the other people. Okay, in your area you know what are the opportunities and problems. So if you involve yourself, you can save others. And during any disaster, the first and quickest response to a disaster at community level will come from the affected people itself. For example, if we are living in an area, if a flood is going to come, we are the first responders. Okay, and the initiative has to be taken from our side. Okay, so we have to understand the disaster because the local people understand the language. Okay, so it is easy to spread the message to other people. Then you have to involve yourself in helping others. Okay, so a hazard can strike anyone irrespective of caste, sex, religion, age, class, etc. But it may affect people differently because their capacity to respond to a hazard. Okay, so a hazard will definitely affect everybody, but its effect will be varying. Why means people who are vulnerable will be affected most. So already we discussed this in the first unit. Okay, so in a community, women, children, aged people, and people with disabilities are the most vulnerable people. So when a hazard occurs, these are the people who are going to get affected most. For example, people with disabilities cannot move. Okay, they cannot immediately respond during a disaster. So the effect of disasters will be more to them. Okay, so the impact of disasters will vary based on the vulnerabilities. Local people are capable of initiate and sustain their own community development. Okay, definitely, whenever you live in an area and if a disaster occurs, most of them will be your friends or relatives. So you will try to help them. You will try to initiate and take some actions to reduce the impact of the disaster. So we have to involve the community. Okay, and why community has to be involved? Various community members and groups in the community will have different perceptions of risk and varying vulnerabilities. Okay, so due to that you have to involve everybody. The involvement of community can give very useful insights and ideas about various traditional ways of coping the disaster which others can make use to reduce the hazard. Okay, so if you get the idea of elderly people, they may have some different opinions, they may have traditional ways. So if you use them, you can reduce the impact of disasters. So get help from others. Individually, don't work, get the help of elderly people. Use traditional mechanisms because relief measures will come after some time only. So immediately you have to react. Okay, so if you have any measures, spread the word and get the help. The community can play a very crucial role in taking right decisions in planning by sharing their valuable experiences. So try to interact with others. Get as much as information possible. Then community can also involve themselves in hazard identification and risk analysis with the insights of disaster experience. So when tsunami occurred in Indian Ocean, we had an experience. We have learnt a lesson, and through that, now we have developed mechanism, a tsunami warning system, and now this tsunami warning system is helping lot of people in the Indian Ocean. Okay, lot of countries are helped by the tsunami warning system established by India. So a community can identify the hazard and they can do an analysis and it will help them. Okay, sometimes disasters become uncontrollable. Okay, you cannot control it. It may last for a longer period. So preventive steps has to be taken before and after a disaster. Okay, for example, if a cyclone is going to come, you should not watch TV and sit. Okay, preventive measures has to be taken. So what are the preventive measures? We have discussed it many times. Okay, if a community is not well prepared, control over the disaster would be definitely lost. Okay, the impact will be huge on the population. If an individual is familiar with the ways of coping and precautionary measures for the disaster, then the impact of the disaster can be reduced. Okay, so if each and every individual knows, or if they are prepared to meet a disaster, then the impact of the disaster will be lesser. All communities and villages will respond for any disaster. Okay, definitely they have a major role to play during the disaster. Okay, what are all the things that they can do? Okay, so first they have to spread the information about the disaster. Okay, warning message has to be given. Okay, then at the time of disaster they have to take people to a safe place. They have to identify the areas which are affected most, vulnerable areas. Then with the experience of previous disasters, they have to develop survival methods. Okay, survival methods, collect all the basic needs, communicate with others, and try to reduce the impact of the disasters. Okay, more number of people lives can be saved during first few hours of the disasters. So during the first few hours, others may not come. Bridges may be collapsed, roads may be destroyed. So helicopters cannot come. So only the local people can respond faster. So in the first few hours, more number of people's life has to be saved. Okay, and in the first few hours, numerous problems will become. First, you will be in shock. Psychologically, you will be affected first, even though if you are prepared for that. But at the time of disaster, everybody will have psychological problem. Mentally, will be shocked. But if you are affected lessly, you have to overcome from that. Then you have to help others also. Okay. So, components of community based disaster risk management or disaster risk reduction. Okay. So, what are all the things that should be known if you are planning for a community based disaster risk management? So, we need community profile. Okay, we need community profile. For example, if you are living in a village area, first you have to do some assessment. Okay, how many number of people are living in that area? What type of area do you live? What type of hazard is going to come? Then based on that, you have to plan for that is rescue measures. Okay, so where we are going to take the people? So for that you should know how much amount of population is there. So based on that you have to arrange them temporary shelters. Okay, so community profile is required. So what type of population, how much amount of population, then how do you spread the message? Okay, community profile. Then resource inventory. So if you think that a flood is going to come or a cyclone is going to come, you have to prepare yourself. So how to prepare? So first and foremost is you have to save people's life. So we are going to get involved in rescue measures. So for that we need vehicles. So how much number of vehicles are there? Okay, rescue vehicles are there. Are they in good condition? How much amount of food is there for the people? If you try to save 1,000 people, because there are 1,000 people in your nearby area, and if you find shelter for 1,000 people, do you have that much amount of food if cyclone is going to last for 1 week or 3 days? Okay, so how much amount of food is there? How much amount of water is there? How much amount of clothing is there? Sanitization. Okay, all these resource inventories has to be done. Okay, then you should try to assess the structural and non-structural resources. Okay, you have to analyze how much amount of good buildings are there, how much amount of poor buildings are there. So all these things has to be assessed. Then risk mapping through community maps. Okay, so involve the community. Okay, which area is going to get affected most? Then based on that you plan. Okay, you discuss with government agencies, elderly people, non government organizations, international organizations, and plan for the impact of disaster. Okay. Involve the community, get help from them, plan for it, and spread the message. Okay. Spread the message through mass media or arrange meetings. Send message through SMS, through television. Okay, so in some form, you have to send the warning message to all the people in local languages as well as international languages. Then you have to conduct some mock drills, future mock drills. For example, you can give training to them. Okay, for example, if you are living in a seashore, seashore are the most affected regions due to cyclones and storms. So often the cyclones and storms will come, so you have to give training to them. Okay, you have to give some practice to them when a disaster comes, how they have to behave. Then before a cyclone comes, you have to conduct some mock drills. For example, government many times they try to conduct what is that, fire mock drills. Okay, fire extinction at higher buildings, how fire extinguishers have to work, how the people has to behave. So like that, mock drills has to be organized. The hill region, when a landslide occurs, okay, how people has to behave, so mock drills has to be organized. Then community plan. Okay, so community planning is required. So these five are the components of community based disaster risk management plan. Okay, so what is community profile? Okay, this we have discussed. So includes the characteristics of physical, administrative, geographic, demographic, social, economic, and infrastructure profile. Okay, so it involves what type of people we have, what type of buildings we have, what type of administration we have. All these profile has to be known to you. Are you living in a village area, city area, or metropolitan area? All these things has to be known. Okay. Then what type of area do you live? Importantly, okay. Development position and the context upon which disaster will impact the area. So what will be the impact of disaster on our area? So that should be included. Okay, because when a cyclone comes, the eye is the powerful area, so where the eye is going to hit. Okay, some areas will be leastly affected, some areas will be mostly affected. The mostly affected areas has to be identified and it has to be assessed. Resource inventory. Okay, so the type of assessment you do. Okay, how much food, manpower we have, livelihood, sanitization, electricity, all the information has to be added. Risk map. Okay, so includes the open spaces, medical facilities, communication facilities, transportation facilities. So all these has to be planned and mapped with our preparedness plan. Future mock drills. Okay, you can plan for the mock drills, you can train them. Okay, you can give a warning message, you can give an awareness word. Okay, so mock drills are important in spreading words. Okay, now preparation. Okay, preparation of community based disaster risk management plan. So how we get prepared ourselves, what is the process involved? Okay, so in community based disaster preparedness plans, we have to involve communities. Okay, because they know about their hazard, they know the vulnerable people, they know the resource available, and they know the safest place also. So if all these things are known to us, okay, and if you involve the local community, then preparedness becomes easier. For example, if a disaster is going to come to your place, for example a flood, and if you wait for WHO from US, first and foremost thing, language itself is a problem. They don't know what type of resource we have. Okay, so everything will be collapsed. So community involvement is best for preparedness during a disaster. So planning process has been divided into three major sections: identification of community and preparation of community profile. Okay, so identification of community unit and the preparation of community profile is very very important. Okay, the preparation of community map shows the vulnerable areas, resources and evacuation routes. Then based on that you have to prepare the task forces. Okay, so you have to identify people and you have to allot them specific works, task forces, committees and emergency response team. Okay, so the various steps in preparation and process of community based disaster management plans. Okay, so step 1 is collection of basic information and identification of logical unit. Okay, so if you expect a disaster, then we have to collect the basic information. Okay, what type of area we are living, how many number of people is going to get affected, how much amount of food is there. Okay, how many number of men is there, women is there, children is there. Okay, what type of relief measures we can take. Okay, how many number of relief members are there. So all these informations has to be collected. Okay, then step 2 is organizing community meeting. Okay, so if a disaster is going to come to our place, then we have to call the active members and we have to spread the message. Okay, that a community the disaster is going to come, what will be the impact of the disaster in that particular area. Okay, so organizing community meeting by informing most of the community people. Step 3, preparation of community profile. Okay, so as already discussed, okay, this community profile involves all types of profiles. For example, government, geological, meteorological, okay, vulnerable people, local people, all the profiles has to be included. Then step 4, preparation of community based disaster preparedness map. Okay, so involve all type of people, plan for it. Okay, get experience of the elderly people, experience of the government agencies, non government agencies, and prepare a map. Okay, how you are going to save. Okay, then preparation of local committees, task forces and emergency directory. So after collecting all the information, now you form groups. Okay, some group for immediate response. Okay, to save the people. A set of people for transportation, a set of people for medicine, that is emergency medicine. Okay, because as soon as you save people they will be in shock, so we need separate people to take care them, to give medicines. Okay, so like that we have to form separate task forces. Okay, and work has to be allotted to them. Then after conducting meetings, you have to conduct mock drills. For example, if you live in an area where there are 1,000 people living or 1,000 families, you have to conduct mock drills at appropriate places such that all 1,000 population or 1,000 people or 1,000 families watch that mock drill. Okay, how they have to behave during a disaster, because mock drills are important processes which spreads the message of disaster plans. Okay, so these are the 6 important steps in community based disaster preparedness and planning. Then next important thing in community based disaster risk reduction is community resilience. So a community's resilience is its ability to overcome a disaster. Okay, so this can either during recovering rapidly from the shock of a disaster or working to solve the problems. such as unemployment or blighted neighborhoods. Okay, so how fast we are coming out of the disaster. Okay, so the benefits of community based disaster risk management or community resilience. So, preventing loss of life and injury. So, if you involve yourself in disaster risk reduction, if you help others, you can save people's life. Okay, you can save others from getting injured. Reducing property damage of homes and business. Okay, reducing business interruption, reduce the revenue loss. Okay, helping to lower emergency response. Okay, helping to recover the disaster cost, attracting new business, attracting new residents, protecting the cultural and historical assets, reducing the environmental damage. Then finally building a sense of place and peace of mind. So if you help others, others will have confidence, they will think that people are there to help us, so they will be morally supported. Okay, and they will support others, so like that a community will build up automatically, and a community will help others. A local community will help a district, a district will help a state will help a country will come help internationally. So like that the world will be benefited most by community involvement. Okay, so we have to involve ourselves in each and every type of planning, prevention, mitigation, response, relief, recovery, and rehabilitation and reconstruction. So, if you involve yourself, if you involve your family, if you involve your family and friends, okay, definitely the impact of the disaster will be reduced. So, involvement of community in disaster management is very, very important. Okay, students, in the next class, we will be discussing about the agencies involved in disaster risk management and the early warning system. Okay, some warning message has to be given to people, so that we will discuss early warning system. Thank you.